Hello, everybody. How are you guys doing? So, there's some breaking news about Assange's health. I'm just gonna pull this up for you and show you what's happening. This was posted earlier by WikiLeaks on Twitter and Stella Morris, Assange's partner, and he suffered a stroke. All right. So this didn't happen now, but we're getting the news now. This happened in October, okay? Let me show this to you, okay? So, hold on. Wrong tweet, just a second. I'm switching out to the next one. There we go. Yeah, so you can see here the tweet from WikiLeaks. Breaking, doctors confirmed Julian Assange suffered a stroke on the morning of his latest hearing. And that confused a lot of people because latest hearings, they thought that it meant, yesterday when the High Court handed down a judgment. It doesn't mean that. This happened in October. Let me read to you the article, okay? So this is from the Daily Mail. And as I said, it's confirmed by WikiLeaks and by Stella Morris. Julian Assange had a stroke in Belmarsh prison, right? And this was, as we said, this was in October, right? And you guys need to remember something. I mean, I tweeted about that, and he did not look good back then. But let's just go through the article. So it says, Julian Assange has had a stroke in Belmarsh prison, his fiancée Stella Morris revealed last night. The WikiLeaks publisher 50, who is being held on remand in the maximum security jail while fighting extradition to America, was left with a drooping right eyelid, memory problems, and signs of neurological damage. He believes the mini stroke was triggered by the stress of the ongoing U.S. court action against him and an overall decline in his health as he faces his third Christmas behind bars. It happened at the time of a high court appearance via video link from Belmarsh in October. So when I saw Assange in August, I mean, forgive me for saying it, but he looked like crap. And now we know why. I mean, that was in August, right? And then again, in October, we had the 2-day hearing at the High Court where October 27th, the prosecution laid out their grounds of appeal, and then October 28th, the defense responded. Now, you might recall, they wouldn't let him attend. Assange wanted to attend in person. They didn't allow him to. And we only saw him on October 27th, if my memory serves me well. So, October 28th, he wasn't even there, right? Now, what can I say, man? This guy, they're killing him. They're killing him. Now, if you read the article, they continue to say here that this was a transient, forgive me for the pronunciation, ischemic attack, the interruption of the blood supply to the brain, and that can be a warning sign of a full stroke. Assange has since had an MRI scan and is now taking anti-stroke medication. And Stella Morris said, Julian is struggling and I fear this mini stroke could be the precursor to a more major attack. It compounds our fears about his ability to survive the longer this long legal battle goes on. And then she continues, quote, it urgently needs to be resolved. Look at animals trapped in cages in a zoo. It cuts their life short. That's what's happening to Julian. The never-ending court cases are extremely stressful mentally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you don't need to be a doctor to know that, do you? It's tragic. It's terrible. What can I say? The warning signs are all there. You know, when Neil Smeltzer visited Assange in prison in Belmarsh, where he's being held, this is what he said. He said, Mr. Assange showed all symptoms typical for prolonged exposure to psychological torture, including extreme stress, chronic anxiety, and intense psychological trauma. Now, again, Nils Melzer is the special rapporteur on torture for the United Nations, and he visited Julian Assange in Belmarsh prison with 2 physicians, right, who examined him properly. Of course, the prosecution didn't like this report. They attacked it numerous times because it says the obvious. Some other things, this is from The Intercept, and it relates to Dr. Crosby. Now, Dr. Crosby, she testified at the Assange extradition hearing, right? And she said a multitude of things, right? She said his mental health is shot, his physical health is shot. And, she basically said what the other doctor said. This guy is not doing well. Now, I want to read you something from the Intercept here, okay? This is published 2019, I believe, right? Yeah, April 15th, 2019. Now, during 7 years of confinement, Assange had suffered a number of serious deleterious effects of sunlight deprivation, she wrote, including neuropsychological impairment, weakened bones, decreased immune function, and increased risk for cardiovascular disease and cancer. In her April 8th letter, Crosby wrote that the highest priority for Assange's medical care was his critical need for an oral surgery procedure, adding that the severe daily pain from his dental condition is inhumane. This is exactly what we heard in the High Court, right? In the Old Bailey during the extradition hearing, because she testified last year. Here I have the tweets up right here, actually. So this was in September 24th, 2020, right? I was live tweeting about this when she testified, and she said that Assange's physical and mental health were in decline. So I'm showing you all of these things, the medical testimony. And again, Dr. Crosby is not even the main key medical expert, right? There is Professor Koppelman, Blackwood, etc. But I'm showing you all these things so you understand, so we can try to understand why Assange has had this stroke. Here's something else about the mental conditions that Assange is being held in. This is, again, his fiancée, his partner, said she's asking the prison, HMP Belmarsh, please deliver Julian's warm clothes that are sitting in prison storage. They were located last week but haven't been delivered. It's close to freezing at night. The cells are not properly insulated and Julian is freezing. It's December and he needs his winter clothing. This is last year. Almost exactly a year ago. But here's more. I want to read you something else. This is from the BBC, 2012. The headline reads, Julian Assange's lung infection. So this is when he's in the embassy already, right? And last month, Ecuadorian ministers said Mr. Assange had visibly lost weight and that his health was beginning to be jeopardized. Okay? Up here, Anna Albin said the WikiLeaks founder, who was fighting UK efforts to send him to Sweden, was suffering from living in a, quote, in a confined space. Okay? And not only does the embassy have few windows, but the city is also dark at this time. We have very little daylight in London. He's exposed to any health consequences from this lack of sunlight and lack of fresh air. So again, why am I reading you all these things? Because this is something that has gone on for 10 years. This isn't something that, Assange just had a stroke for no reason, or a mini stroke, as they're calling it, during the High Court proceedings. No, this is a persecution over 10 years in the embassy, outside the embassy, in Belmarsh prison. I mean, who the hell wouldn't have a stroke? Honestly, who the hell wouldn't be suicidal? Who wouldn't be? Who wouldn't be? You got the CIA trying to kill you, or at least discussing plans to potentially kill you. You have an indictment threatening you with 175 years. I mean, come on, the list is this long. Who the hell wouldn't have a stroke? And again, this is I don't like saying this because it's it's not the nicest compliment, but this is in August, right? So 2 months before he had the stroke, I said that I could barely recognize that it was Assange because I'm watching the court, right? And I can see him beamed in. And I said he looked awful and old. It's true. Like, my brain didn't even recognize it was him. There was just like this old dude on the screen. And it took me minutes. It's like, oh, it's him. And this is a month before. And then, as I said, or 2 months rather, right? August 11th is when this happened. And then he has the stroke in October during the high court proceedings. So that's October 27, October 28. And like I said, we only saw him one day, I believe it was, on October 27th. October 28th, we didn't even see him. Right? I mean, this guy's locked up 23 hours a day in Belmarsh, right? 23 hours a day. Sometimes I'm asking myself, what's the difference between SAMS, between Belmarsh, between, being in a medium high security like Mendoza? They all lock you up 23 hours a day. Is that not severe extreme isolation? Obviously, there are differences, in terms of communication and things like that. But you get the idea, right? Because the whole reason the extradition was blocked is because the judge said this guy will kill himself if he's isolated, right? If he's put in these oppressive prison conditions. And what the United States is doing now, the game they're trying to play, is they're saying, look, we won't put him in special administrative measures. We won't put him in SAMS. Yeah, but you could put him in a special housing unit. You could put him in a communication management unit. They have all these different names for what is solitary confinement. They have different flavors. When you go to jail in the U.S., if they don't want you to talk to the press, they don't want anything about your conditions to come out, any of the truth, they can just put you in they have a wide array, a variety of different solitary confinements. So the U.S. can say, look, we never broke the assurance. We didn't put him in SAMS. And then they can go and throw him in a CMU. And he'll be just as isolated in a CMU or in an SHU. And that is what will be the catalyst. That is what could trigger a suicide attempt. The judge made this very clear. So they're playing semantics here, right? If they put Assange in isolation and he kills himself and they'll say, look, we didn't put him in SAMS. It was a CMU. That's not our fault he killed himself. This is the game they're playing here, And I just want to take a moment to say something. This is kind of messed up. Like, why we're talking about which kind of prison he will go to. What the fuck should he be in prison anyway? Why are we having this discussion? But nevertheless, I'm trying to explain to you the games that they're playing here, and what a decade-long persecution does to someone. Because you have to remember that this is really going back a decade, little over a decade now. And it takes on many dimensions. It takes on many dimensions. The thing is, I want people to understand something. This is not just a physical or just a mental thing. It's both. Both are intricately related. Okay, they're intricately connected. One affects the other. So this chronic stress. You got the CIA on your back. You got the DOJ on your back. You got the UK courts on your back. Everyone out to get you. That's going to take a toll on you, man. That would take a toll on you sitting comfortably at home. Never mind in a jail. And you have to remember, Assange is in Belmarsh prison, right? So I've seen the place from the outside. It's known. It's famous as one of the toughest prisons in England, and this is where they send all the scum. It's made for terrorists and people like that. What is a journalist doing there? You tell me. It's a Category A prison. That means maximum security. Maximum security for a journalist. What are they afraid of? Nevertheless, that's why he's stuck in prison 23 hours a day in his cell. And you guys remember when the extradition hearing started in September last year. They came to him and rearrested him on a fresh indictment And at this point, he's going to the court to start the extradition hearing. He hasn't seen his lawyers in 6 months, right? He hasn't seen his lawyers, barely seen his family. And so, number one, he couldn't work on the case. But number two, the point that I'm trying to make is isolation. So even in the prison in the UK, before he's even extradited, they're already isolating him, and this stuff is taking a toll on him. In the embassy for 7 years, in Belmarsh now over 2 years. You see the problem here, and this is very important because you're going to have a lot of people who say that, oh, well, you know, it's fake, and he's just making this up. What are you going to say now? Because you had people saying that, right? They said that he's not mentally ill, he's not suffering physically or mentally, or he's not sick, he's perfectly fine, he's in good health. Extradite him. Were you going to argue with this? The guy just had a stroke. And once again, I reiterate, why should he have to have a stroke for you to get it? That's kind of irrelevant here. I said this many times. Even if Assange was in perfect health, what are you doing? Like, this guy doesn't fucking owe you anything. He's not American. He's never lived in the U.S. He hasn't worked in the U.S. Fuck you. You're not extraditing him. So this is very important that's why I've gone through all these things. The chronic lung condition. Even he wants to go to the dentist, can't do that because he was stuck in the embassy. They were threatening to storm the embassy. They spied on him. You know the story. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture saying this guy's been tortured. What more do you need? Jesus Christ. What more do you need? I mean, seriously. How many more doctors do you need to testify on this guy's behalf? How many strokes does he have to have for you to get it? So it's very sad news. In the article, as I said, I'm going to read it to you again. They say that he was left with a drooping right eyelid, memory problems, and signs of neurological damage, right? And they say that he's taking anti-stroke medication now, okay? And I don't know, man. I just, sometimes you're lucky, you can recover from that. Sometimes it's a warning that something worse is coming. It shouldn't get to this point. It shouldn't get to this point. This is very bad. And I mean, I don't know. I'm just speechless. This stuff took me aback, honestly. It's disgusting. This is why when people say like you're killing him, it's not an exaggeration. It's the truth. It's the truth. And you remember this email where this internal U.S. email where they were saying they want to basically keep on making him run from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Even in the high court, the prosecutor, James Lewis, what did he say? He said if this extradition case fails, they'll just open a new one. That's why do you think they haven't indicted him on the CIA leaks, the Vault 7 leaks from 2017? They're keeping that. So in case this case doesn't work out, they can open a fresh indictment and just keep this going on and on and on. Right? Punishment by process. Now, I wanted to show you something here because we talked about Nils Melzer, and he tweeted about it actually, right? Just now about this stroke. He says, Assange's stroke is no surprise. As we warned after examining him, unless relieved of the constant pressure of isolation, arbitrariness, and persecution, his health would enter a downward spiral, endangering his life. The UK is literally torturing him to death. And he says, as Assange clearly was not medically fit to attend his own trial through video link, how can they even discuss whether he's fit to be exposed to a show trial in the US, a country that refuses to prosecute its torturers and war criminals, but persecutes whistleblowers and journalists? What can I say, man? What can I say that I haven't already said? Speaking of which, I want to show you something else, which, give me a second to open this up for you. It's, again, related to Assange. Okay. So, So yesterday, the High Court issued this judgment, right? They've allowed the extradition to go ahead. They've said that they accept the U.S. assurances, and they say the judge should have notified the U.S. of her provisional view and given them a chance to offer these assurances earlier, right? So even though the High Court accepts Assange is suicidal, they accept all the medical evidence, they've decided to trust the United States. They've decided to trust the U.S. and trust that the U.S. will treat Assange fairly when he gets to the United States, that they won't put him in special administrative measures in SAMS. They won't send him to ADX Florence. Things like that, right? Now, there's one part in the judgment. Let me show this to you. Let me read this to you. We, meaning the court, take a similar view of two other cases relied on by Mr. Assange, namely those of David Mendoza and Abu Hamza. Both can be said to show that the USA may be expected to apply the strict letter of an assurance which it has given, but neither provides any evidence of a failure to comply with an assurance, and neither provides any support for Mr. Assange's submission that this court should not regard the offered assurances as reliable. I mean, if I show this to David, he's going to lose his, So I don't know how many of you are catching up, but David Mendoza was extradited to the U.S. from Spain in 2009. And I published an article about 2 weeks ago with a bunch of classified documents from his case. They also said the same thing to him, right? You can go to Spain to serve your sentence. Just like they're telling Assange, you can go to Australia to serve your sentence. Yeah, well, guess what? They lied. They lied to Mendoza. They kept him there for 7 years. Almost 7 years. And he had to sue Spain and the Spanish Supreme Court twice. He had to sue the United States, and then they sent him back because Spain was threatening to suspend the extradition treaty. So, it got to a critical point, and only then they sent him back. And here the judges are saying that they don't think Mendoza's case provides any evidence of a failure to comply with an assurance or any support for Mr. Assange's submission. Well, let me tell you something. These judges didn't see the documents that I published. I highly doubt that they saw the documents because there's no way on earth they could have written that. No way. Unbelievable. Now, let's play devil's advocate for a second. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. And let's say that they really are just looking at the assurances, right? What do the assurances to Mendoza say? They said the United States will not object to him making an application to serve his sentence in Spain, which is not the same thing. Because when you make an application to transfer to another country, that's your right. So the United States cannot block this application anyway. And they're very clever in the assurance. They didn't say we will send Mendoza back to Spain. They said we won't stop him from making an application. That's not the same thing. So just on that alone, you should have alarm bells going off. There should be, this is a red flag that something is off here. It's the same thing with Assange, right? They don't say we won't put him in SAMS. They say we won't put him in SAMS unless he does something to deserve it. Which I don't even know what that could mean anything. So in that sense, it's true. The United States didn't block him from making an application, but guess what? They denied it. They sure as hell denied his application 3 times. They allowed him to make the application, but then they denied it every single time. They kept him. They wouldn't let him go back to Spain. So technically, yes, they kept their word. Now, here's the problem with Mendoza's case, because Mendoza had something more than just these assurances. He had a contract with the U.S. He signed a contract with Spain and with the U.S. It's a contract. It's better than an assurance. You're giving your word. You are committing to an agreement. It was signed by Kimberly Weiss, who works at the U.S. Embassy in Madrid. And that contract was very clear. It didn't have any, mucking about like the assurance. It was very clear. It said you have to comply with the conditions that have been imposed by the Spanish court. What are these conditions? Again, you have to serve Mendoza has to serve his sentence in Spain. You can't give him a life sentence, and you cannot try him for currency structuring. This is crystal clear. Mendoza signed it, Spain signed it, the U.S. signed it. Did they abide by it? No. As a matter of fact, they wouldn't give him a copy, right? Usually when you sign a contract, you're given a copy of the contract, right? Both parties, or in this case, all three parties have a copy. Mendoza wasn't given a copy. They told him it's classified. Of course they told him it's classified. And then they gave him a copy without his signature. So basically it's useless because he goes to court and he say, hey, the U.S. didn't keep its word. We signed a contract. And the judge will just look at it and say, no, you didn't. I don't see your signature here. So that's how they screwed him, right? Among other things. And I published a long article about this. It's like 8,000 words. Go read it. And I did so many videos about this. And I am just absolutely astonished. I mean, I'm going to send this to Dave. He's going to lose his shit when I show him this. He already lost it when Lewis talked about him in the court. He said, yeah, but, in the end, Mendoza was allowed to go back to Spain. Yeah, after 7 years, he was allowed to go back. After he sued you. He sued the Department of Justice. He sued Spain. Then he was allowed to go back. But you didn't want to let him go back. You denied his application 3 times. I published the documents. Dude, what is this? What is this? This is outrageous. This is absolutely outrageous. I mean, come on, man. Look what they say here. Both cases can be said to show that the USA may be expected to apply the strict letter of an assurance which it has given, but neither provides any evidence of a failure to comply with an assurance, and neither provides any support for Mr. Assange's submission that this court should not regard the offered assurances as reliable. I'm very sorry, but it provides plenty support. Plenty. And I'm gonna make this argument again to you. When Julian Assange was denied bail, why was Julian Assange denied bail? I was at the hearing on January 6th. The same judge, it's the same judge who blocked the extradition, who saved his ass. 2 days later, she says, I'm denying you bail. And why did she do that? She denied him bail because of his past behavior, right? Now, we can have a whole discussion about whether seeking political asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy is really bail jumping or not. I mean, every person who's ever been politically persecuted broke the law. It doesn't mean the law was right. That's a whole other discussion. Just follow my logic here, my point. The judge blocked Assange's bail. She denied him bail because of his past behavior. How come when it comes to the United States, these assurances aren't blocked as well? Based on the United States' past behavior. You can't take into account Assange's bad behavior, but turn a blind eye to the U.S. bad behavior, to the fact that it violates its assurances, that its assurances are garbage. I mean, even if Mendoza's case didn't exist, and tragically it does, you look at the assurance, you read it, and it's full of holes, right? They're giving themselves a way out of it. Mendoza's case does exist, and there are many like him. You guys need to understand something. Julian Assange's case is certainly unique, right? It criminalizes journalism and so on and so on. But when it comes to these extraditions, when it comes to these diplomatic assurances, it's actually not unique. As I'm finding out and as I'm publishing to you and showing you, this is standard behavior from the U.S. This is standard behavior. They give everyone garbage assurances, just like they've given Assange. So in that regard, he's not really any different, and that's the problem. This is it's inherent. It's inherent to the U.S. legal system, or injustice system, as it should be called, right? And to the State Department, how they interact with other countries. This is standard behavior. They've done it with Mendoza, Victor Bout, John McAfee, Konstantin Yuroshenko, and I'll go into these other cases in due time. But you look at Mendoza's case, you look at Assange's case, they're very similar in terms of where the sentence should be served. They told both of them you can go and serve it in your home country. Although keep in mind, Mendoza's both a U.S. and a Spanish national, so both are his home countries. But they were very clear in this. And when they say, for example, that Assange can go to Australia, Australia has to consent as well, and Australia has said nothing. So what does that mean? It's worthless. Look, man, the United States cannot just come and say, we're going to send this prisoner to, Morocco or to Mongolia or Tanzania or South Korea. No, the other country that's taking the prisoner has to say yes. You can't just send prisoners wherever you want. And this is no different. So when the US says it'll allow Assange to go to Australia, that doesn't mean Australia is going to take him. Australia have said nothing. So forget about this assurance. It's worthless. It means absolutely nothing. Man, this is really outrageous what they've done here. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this. Forgive me. I'm not as well versed with Abu Hamza's case as I am with David Mendoza's. But I'm going to tell you one thing. At the High Court, the lead prosecutor, James Lewis, what did he tell the High Court judges just 2 months ago? He told them that diplomatic assurances are very special. And this is exactly what he said. He said, these are solemn undertakings given out at the highest order. These are not dished out like Smarties. He's right, yeah. Not everyone gets diplomatic assurances from the US. They give out a lot of them, they surely do. But they are supposed to be special, according to Lewis. Well, David Mendoza got diplomatic assurances. He definitely got them. I showed them to you. I published them. They're garbage. And then the contract the U.S. signed, they also ripped it up. They didn't abide by it. They didn't do nothing. So not taking the U.S. past behavior into account, this is such a damning thing to say. This is such a damning thing to say. I mean, this is really bad because to me, this tells me the judges have not done their homework. With all due respect, the judges have not done their homework. This is just not true. I'm not speculating. I'm not giving an opinion. This is fucking factual, right? I gave you the documents. It's not my opinion. If you go and read my Mendoza article, there is no opinion in there whatsoever. It's all facts. 8,000 words of facts. And then they go on to say there is no reason why this court should not accept the assurances as meaning what they say. There is no basis for assuming that the USA has not given the assurances in good faith. Jesus Christ. How on earth can any rational person say this? Again, with all due respect to the Lord Justices and Lord Chief Justices, what is this? What is this? When the United States signs an accord, for example, the Iran nuclear talks, they rip it up. When they give assurances, they're vague and ambiguous. They don't mean anything. They don't abide by them. When they do sign something explicit, when they do sign something that isn't ambiguous, that is actually very clear-cut, very explicit in its meaning, and they still violate that too. How on earth did you come to this conclusion? My goodness. My goodness. And this is also very wrong. I mean, again, what they're saying here is that the USA submitted that the risk that Mr. Assange would be made subject to SAMS and or would be detained at the ADX was front and center of the opinions of both Professor Koppelman and Dr. Dealey and was the basis of the judge's decision that extradition would be oppressive. Once that risk is removed by the assurances, the judge would have reached a different decision. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. Because the United States, they played a very good game in court. I'm going to tell you what they did. They spent several days in court saying, there's nothing wrong with special administrative measures. You're not in isolation. You get recreation. Yeah, like, you get moved into an adjacent room that is empty with no equipment, nothing. That's their idea of recreation. And they monitor your phone calls with your lawyers even. You have like 2 50-minute phone calls a month or something absurd. And they spent days saying, it's not bad. There's a whole program where you can have these restrictions lifted bit by bit based on good behavior. If you behave well in prison, we'll be nicer to you. They spent days arguing this crap at the extradition hearing. And after the judge blocks the extradition because they're so adamant they want to place Assange in SAMS, then they come out and say, well, look, we promise we won't put him in SAMS. We promise we won't send him to ADX. Look, we'll give you assurances too. Yeah, but why didn't you say that before? You spent days arguing that SAMs are wonderful. They talked about it like it was a summer camp or something. They said there's an arts and crafts program for the prisoners. And now that the judge said, no, I'm not sending Assange to these horrific conditions, then the United States is like, no, it's okay. We promise we won't put him in SAMs. Yeah, well, the issue is not just SAMs. They spent so much time trying to convince the court that SAMs are okay that we didn't talk. You didn't hear any talk about other things. For example, communication management unit, right? Or the special housing unit. They have so many different things that they can do to screw you. And another thing I want to point out, even if Assange isn't sent to ADX, to a federal supermax, the problem is that he could be placed, for example, in a medium-high security, like Mendoza. And I had Mendoza on the show, and I asked him, I already knew because I interviewed him before, but I wanted him to say it to you guys to explain it in his own words, is that even in a medium-high security, in a lower security facility, you're stuck in your cell 23 hours a day. The United States, prison industry rather, is so punitive that even in the lesser security ones, they screw you like that. And by the way, look at Belmarsh. What were we talking about earlier? Even in Belmarsh in London, you're stuck 23 hours a day. He's not even been extradited yet. He's not even been extradited. So the idea, my point here is that the idea that SAMS is the only issue and ADX is the only issue, this is ridiculous. The United States, they operate Guantanamo Bay in broad daylight, and they don't give a shit, Man. This is very disappointing. And I don't know what it is. I don't know why this is the case. When I asked Mendoza what he thinks the judges know, right? So we're talking about the European judges, the British judges, the Spanish judges. He thinks that they know exactly where they are sending not just Assange, but other people who are extradited. Remember, Assange is not the only person who's ever faced extradition to the U.S. This is a really terrible system. It's inherently sick and evil. And he thinks that they know exactly, and then they do this anyway. That's very. What am I supposed to say? Disappointing is kind of putting it mildly. It's not even scratching the surface. The United States has the world's largest prison population. I think the figure is about 2 million behind bars. 2 million. How many people do you think are extradited from Europe or elsewhere to the U.S. every year? And how many people do you think are extradited from the U.S. overseas? I can assure you, the number of people coming to the U.S., extradited to the U.S., dwarfs any Americans leaving the U.S. I'm just speculating here, but I think it's a pretty good guess. I think it's a pretty accurate guess. You might have a handful of Americans extradited a year. Not even a handful. Meanwhile, you got hundreds, if not thousands, coming from Spain, coming from Europe, coming from Latin, Central America, all over the place. The United States has 2 million people behind bars. Is there a shortage of criminals? Obviously, most of those people don't belong behind bars in the first place. But you catch my drift. The reason you have more people being extradited to the United States than the other way is not because the United States has a shortage of criminals or has a lack of crime. It's because the United States has a one-way street when it comes to extraditions, right? They want everyone else to send their nationals, send foreign nationals their way. But the United States would never send one of their own. They would never do that. They don't care what it is. It's not happening. You know, we've talked about Anne Sekulis, for example, the other day. That's just one example. David Mendoza, he tried to get these figures. He actually, man, I lost count of the people that he asked. He asked everyone because he himself was extradited. He wanted to know how many people are going from Spain to the U.S., how many are going from the U.S. to Spain. They wouldn't tell him. Why is this a secret? Why are these figures a secret? Shouldn't they be public? Shouldn't we know these things? I mean, again, I'm just going to put this up on the screen again because I find this so abhorrent. I mean, they looked at Mendoza's case and found no wrongdoing. I can assure you they didn't look at Mendoza's case. I can assure you they didn't. These documents, they weren't brought up in court. How did they, on what basis did they make, on what basis did they reach such a conclusion? Did they see this? The conditions that the Spanish court imposed? Did they see the diplomatic note from the U.S. for Mendoza? Did they see when the Spanish court said, this diplomatic note is worthless? We need something better. And then they came up with a contract, the Acta de Entrega. A clear contract to make sure the United States doesn't screw around. And here it was signed by Kimberly Weiss. That's her. She works at the U.S. Embassy in Madrid. She says, I know the police. I know the prosecutors. You bet she does. And they took all this property from Mendoza. And then, like I told you, they wouldn't give him an original copy. They screwed him. They gave him a copy without his signature. You know, that's something like a banana republic would do. You know? You sign a contract with someone and then they give you a copy without your signature. What is that? Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's classified. Yeah, well, not any longer. It's not classified anymore. And here they denied his transfer. This is the first time from 2020. They denied it again twice in addition to that. And you can notice here, it says the prisoner may reapply 2 years after this denial. They made that up, by the way. That's not actually a rule under the Strasbourg Prisoner Transfer Treaty, right? The Convention on the Transfer of Sentenced Persons. That's what it's called. There's no rule in there that you have to wait 2 years before you can reapply. That's a U.S. thing that they've just, unilaterally imposed. And, this is the Spanish Supreme Court ruling in Mendoza's favor. They said the Spanish government has done nothing to get him back. If the Spanish government does not get Mendoza back, we will, meaning they'll suspend the extradition treaty. And then over here you have one of the judges, a senior judge. He called in the U.S. ambassador. He wrote this to the Minister of Interior. He said, you need to get Mendoza back right now, or we're going to stop extraditing people, right? And then Mendoza sues the U.S., and then they let him go. They said, if you drop the suit, we'll let you go. So, and then, of course, they screwed him when he got back to Spain, but that's like a whole other story. My point here is that Mendoza was obviously screwed by the United States. They denied his application to transfer back to Spain. They didn't abide by the contract. I know the judges didn't look at this. There's no way. There's no way. How can you cannot write this having looked at the documents that I just showed you. No sane, rational person can write this. You cannot say that Mendoza's case doesn't provide any evidence of a failure to comply with an assurance, or any support for Mr. Assange's submission that this court shouldn't regard the offered assurances as reliable. Look, man, as clear as day, mark my words, if they get this guy to the United States, they're going to screw him. They will screw him. He will fart, and then they will say, put him in SAMS, or CMU, or SHU. Doesn't matter what you call it, ABC, XYZ, I don't care. It's isolation, it's solitary confinement, and that is the trigger for a suicide attempt. And again, I wanna just step back a second here and say that I don't give a shit if they put Julian Assange, in the Ritz-Carlton or in ADX Florence. He shouldn't be fucking extradited in the first place. Do you understand this? You shouldn't be extraditing a journalist to a foreign country. He doesn't fucking owe the U.S. anything. Who is the U.S. to just unilaterally, impose extraditions like this? Man, I was on Graham Elwood's show yesterday, right? And he invited me on. We had a great time, and I explained what happened at the High Court. He told me that if Assange was locked up in China, you'd have, a U.S. fleet going to the South China Sea. You'd have all, F-35s flying overhead in intimidation, right? A show of force, they call it. They wouldn't tolerate this from another country, right? They love to say, oh, Iran is shitting on journalists and China is authoritarian and they lock up journalists. What is this, man? I've never heard of another country doing this kind of crap. Extraditing a foreign national who doesn't even live in your country, he's never been there. Yeah, he's been there once, I think, on holiday or something, on vacation. He hasn't worked there, hasn't lived there, he's not a citizen. You want to extradite him because you publish documents? What? Who does that? Who does that? The United States, apparently. And the UK lets them. I'm just reading your comments. Thank you guys very much. Just give me a second. They're loading. This is a super chat from Tristan. It says these Kafka names the U.S. uses to define hairlines of punishment are incredible. It is plain democracy is now a euphemism for capitalism and fascism. It really is ridiculous, right? They have various flavors of punishment, and it's the same crap. It's the same crap. And this is how they get away with gaming other extra jurisdictions, other foreign judges. They lie to them. They play on them. I want to tell you one thing, by the way, just as an example. In Mendoza's case, you know how they said here for the life sentence that they won't give him a life sentence, but they'll give him a determinate sentence of incarceration, which could mean 5,000 years, 5 gazillion years, 5 days. It could mean anything. What's a determinate sentence of incarceration? That's what they said. And Mendoza told me that not he nor his lawyers spotted that in the assurances until after he was already in the United States. Now, granted, they gave him 14 years. So, that's not equal to a life sentence, because Spain said very clearly, no life sentence or similar term of confinement, because they know other countries play games, right? They'll come and slap you with a 500-year sentence and say, see, that's not a life sentence. It doesn't say life. Yeah, who lives 500 years? No one. So this is a game that the U.S. loves playing. They give people all the time sentences like this in federal court. All the time. They gave one guy called Shalom Weiss 845 years. 845 years in jail. And to add another twist to that, Donald Trump pardoned him, which is like the weirdest plot twist. Anyway, that's a whole other case. I just, as far as I recall, he's been given the longest sentence in U.S. In the U.S. history. So that was just an example of it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon, and especially with the Biden crime bill, the '94 crime bill. These 3-strike laws, all of these various pieces of legislation they have in the U.S. to screw people, right? 3 strikes, 3 felonies, you get a 25 to life. I mean, it's just incredible, right? They hand these things out like candy. They need to. It's business. They make money off of the jails. It's sick. JD Music Production says, thank you, Richard, for being one of the last real journalists out there. You will go down in history as one of our legends. Love from Sweden. You're very kind. Thank you very much. I don't know what to say. I'm just very humbled to read that. Thank you, JD Music Production, and thank you also, Tristan G. You guys are very generous. Thank you for your support for the channel. I really appreciate it. Iberico in the chat says Spain is a banana republic. They straightforward killed McAfee in Catalonian security prison just like that. No investigation or nothing. So Mendoza knew McAfee. And I'm going to explain something about his case, which he told me. And I hope I'm not, butchering this. But basically what the U.S. wanted to do is they wanted to get him for tax because of all the crypto he had amassed and things like that. And in Spain, if you want to try someone criminally for tax evasion, you have to specify what limit it is. And the United States didn't know. So they're trying to extradite him to the U.S., but they didn't even have an exact amount of how much taxes he owed. And that doesn't work in Spain. You have to, the extradition can't violate Spanish law. It has to comply, there has to be equivalence. And that's one thing. Now, he hung himself because he lost in the lower courts. And, he was so scared of going to the U.S., he killed himself because he knew what they were going to do to him, He knows how bad it is in the U.S. He hung himself. And he could have still appealed it, and there could have been maybe he could have gotten lucky explaining the point that I just told you. In addition, another point is that crypto is not really, especially in Spain, it wasn't actually integrated into the law. It wasn't really described clearly under what category it falls and all the tax rules and stuff. So this is just what Mendoza told me, that they were hoping to maybe have some luck in the appeals court. But McAfee, dude, he killed himself because of this, because he didn't want it to be extradited. It's really messed up. And for what, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the amount of money that he owed was like 1 million. 1 million. And they drive him to suicide for that. It's obviously it's not just about the 1 million. They're trying to make a point, and this is the thing with the US. They go in and whether it takes 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, they will go after you. They did that with Gary McKinnon. I interviewed him as well. It's on my website if you want to read it. It was a written interview. They chased him for 10 years trying to extradite him. Lori Love, I don't know how many years exactly it was, but also many years of his life lost, many energy, time, emotions, all spent and exhausted trying to fight an extradition. Assange, as you can see, this is the indictment is perhaps 2 years old, but the persecution is much longer than that. And that's how it is, right? They waste years and years of your life. They just want to make a point that if you cross the U.S., they will come and get you. Holly says, I wish it could be more. Thank you for all you do. Don't sweat it. I'm very grateful for all of your support. Thank you, Holly. Seriously. And also, Marvin says, great show. Appreciate your knowledge, insight, honesty. You are a real journalist. Enjoy seeing you on RT. Thank you very much, Marvin. I appreciate that. And again, I'm humbled by your guys' comments and your support. I'm just reading some of your comments in the chat, and you're most welcome, Iberico. No problem. So I'm going to leave it there. I just wanted to give you this breaking news because, when it comes to Assange, the mainstream media, they instantly have articles published and they jump all over the story. I can tell you something. I didn't see any of these people in the court. We're like 10 people in the court. When Sky News rolled up towards the end of the extradition hearing, the presenter didn't even know the judge's name. He had to look at a cue card or something. It's just pathetic. So my point here is that you have about 10 of us who are in the court reporting, and the mainstream outlets, they rip off They completely rip off, our coverage, and then they twist it to smear Assange. Again, I can't remember who published this headline, or it was something along the lines of, the High Court clears the last obstacle or last hurdle to get Assange to the U.S., like as if it's some, mission accomplished. We're now closer to extraditing a journalist and criminalizing standard journalistic practices. Well done. So my point here is that with Assange having a stroke as well, guarantee you they're going to be all over it like a bunch of fleas. And the problem is that they're going to just sensationalize it, just like they did with his mental health during the extradition hearing, without actually explaining why this is happening. Assange had a stroke. Why did he have a stroke? Because he's being persecuted. Chronic lung condition. Couldn't go see a dentist. He has depression, right? Suffering from severe mental illness. The UN Special Rapporteur visits him with 2 doctors. They say that this guy's clearly being tortured. You have some of the best neuropsychiatrists on the planet, in the world, testifying on his behalf, saying this man is sick. He's suicidal. Can't even wear winter clothes in the freezing cold. They won't even give him his winter clothes. 7 years he's stuck in the embassy, right? No sunlight, crappy London smog, can't breathe. No wonder. Just these physical conditions. In addition to being persecuted, victim of a political witch hunt. You have the CIA on your back, various governments, the UK government, the Swedish government, the US government. They all want to get you. I mean, who the hell wouldn't be sick from that? Physically and mentally sick, ill from that. And the mainstream media won't tell you that. They'll just sensationalize it. Oh, he had a stroke. Why? Explain it. Explain why he had that. This is very clear that chronic stress leads to things like this. And it could be something worse, maybe. Who knows? God forbid. But this witch hunt for 10 years, they're never going to talk about that. CNN, they don't even call him a journalist. It's like the WikiLeaks founder. So I just wanted to make that small note. That's why I wanted to explain that to you, because there's a long history of various things that have happened to Assange, to deteriorate his health mentally and physically. And it's not me saying that. This is the doctors, the numerous doctors, Crosby, Professor Koppelman, Blackwood, Dealey. I mean, even the prosecution's own doctors said the guy is depressed. They just disagreed to which level and how suicidal he was, but they agreed he was suicidal and that he's depressed. And you shouldn't separate mental issues from physical. Your brain is in your body after all. The two affect each other. This chronic stress, this anxiety leads to physical issues, as you can see. And so, how many more doctors do you need to prove that, to say that? But of course, the mainstream media, they won't ever report it how it is. So I wanted to make sure that I did. All right, guys. I've got a few more super chats here. I'm just going to read them out and say thank you. Wicked Sin, there's no note, but thank you very much. I hope I said your name correctly. Cortez says, Richard, thank you for educating me the truth about Julian Assange. We appreciate you. I appreciate you too, Cortez. Thank you so much. And I'm happy you guys were able to tune in. I don't know what time it is where you guys all are, but have a good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. It's getting a bit late for me. I have some... I have a surprise coming for you soon. I have some important coverage to do with the nuclear talks. I can't tell you what it is yet, but you'll see in the next days. So I'm very excited for that. And yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Please make sure you hit the like button and comment. Just interact with the video. It helps with the algorithm. You already know what YouTube does to independent media. And I hate using these, I really hate these stereotypical, these cliche phrases. Hit the like button, smash this. I really hate it, but we actually need it, right? This is not a cooking or a gaming channel. This is walking on thin ice for telling political truths channel. That's what it is. So thank you very much. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.